person believes something unless there's an actual vote. Then we get on the farmland preservation, on the vote. I don't mind being identified as the sole nay vote, but that was not a roll call vote. It says most voted aye. Well, who was the most? I mean, where's the list of people who voted, the most of them who voted aye, who abstained? It was not good form, nor according to Robert's Rules of Order, to identify one person's vote and not all the others. So I would ask that all those sections be struck.
Any other responses to that or concerns?
Didn't we have a conversation at the greater board about when there was just a small number of no votes just for efficiency and minutes? Or I feel like Jerry brought this up at some point because it's implied that everybody else voted yes.
It doesn't say that. It says most voted yes. There's not a roll call vote. Someone calls roll call, then you identify who votes. But I mean, like I said, I don't mind if you want to identify me, but any one of us is not really fair to identify one person's vote and not the rest of them. If you all voted aye, then it should be on the record here that you voted aye, but it's not. It just says most. So we have no idea who voted aye. We only have the idea of who voted no. So that's improper, illegal, and it should be in a minute. Pardon?
If we change most to all others.
It doesn't matter. There was no vote with a roll call. You have to have a roll call vote to identify who voted.
Just take your name out and then be okay.
No, I think you got to take out most voted aye. It's just the motion was adopted is what it should say.
Either that or just give a number. There was how many yeses and how many noes. That would be
Motion carried 6-1.
right. To me, that would be simpler. And it doesn't identify anything.
Did it say, did we, I don't believe we had a hand on that. It was a voice vote. You cannot give a number. You can't do anything other than it was adopted.
I would disagree with that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Fiscal clerk, and I'm a Wisconsin certified fiscal clerk, so I've had lots of training on it. I've identified the nay votes in all of my minutes I've ever taken, and I've seen it recorded that way in other governmental body minutes as well. So I don't believe there's anything wrong with doing it.
I think you're wrong. As an attorney, I've practiced law. I've read Robert's Rules of Order carefully. And I'm also been a clerk and secretary in many groups. And it is not proper form to identify one person's vote and not the other, nor to give a count unless there is an actual showing of hands. You have no idea how many people really said aye without a show of hands. That's when you get a division. It's called a division. When somebody wants a show of hands, they say division. Or I ask for a division, then there's a show of hands, and then you have the number of votes per yes and per no. But you can't identify that without some proper form of identifying it. You may have done it illegally all this time. That's good, but you're not a member of the commission, and I just assume that we would deal with the people on the commission.
Well, I agree with Cassie.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got no issues with it.
I'm sure you wouldn't, but I just want to raise those points.
No, I think it should still be in there. I think it needs to reflect what actually occurred.
Then it should have a show of hands. How do you know who voted how, many voted how?
That is, you're right, as the commission should do that, right?
Right, absolutely. We can have shows of hands, but until we have a show of hands, you cannot identify how many people voted which way.
But for this, then why don't we just say that it was passed on a voice vote?
Right.
That way it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was adopted. That's what happened.
Okay, so that's the one. Let's do it.
Yeah, so just excluding the most voted aye and
Okay, so
one
I
voted
guess-
nay, and then just say just passed on voice
Passed on a
vote,
voice vote and leave it at
motion
that.
carried.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then what, I guess,
The majority of the committee, under discussion of the first public input section, it says the majority of the commission agreed. Well, where's the motion? Who moved to say that the majority of the commission agrees the sessions allow enough adequate time for the public to give their input and ideas? That's an opinion as to what happened. It may be accurate, it may not. But again, there was no motion and second. So you cannot state in the minutes that the majority believes anything unless there's a vote to that extent.
we'll just strike that last line.
Suggestions on how you want it changed instead of.
I would take that sentence out. We took no action at that point. We just went on as the
And then there was one more, right?
That's on the second one. He says the commission believed it would help with grant funding
again, no motion, no second, no vote.
on that. George is saying that should be
And
struck.
if you're going to say it was suggested to finish the comprehensive plan, potentially drafting adopting the zoning, someone did suggest that. But usually if you're going to put someone's position in here, you should identify the person who stated that I suggest we, whatever. Again, no vote as to what as the commission, but let's just leave that one as is. If you want to take out the commission believed it would help grant funding, I think that should be struck. So I'd move to approve the minutes with those changes.
I'm just wondering if, because it was specific that we can't apply for WIDA grants without this, do we need to just, instead of making it a general statement, just say,
Well, what's the source of that?
well, let me just.
Good.
Well, that was from economic development. I just don't remember who. That was Hannah or.
It would be nice to get a definitive on that because I keep hearing from some that it's not required for any grants. And if whoever stated that, it would be good to have a source.
Right, well, that's what I was, because the grant funding part of it, to me, is substantial in the discussion. I just don't remember who. Was it?
Yeah, it was me.
We could do it that way.
Sure.
That it was for information given by Hannah
And
to the
indicated
committee that certain WIDA grants are not WIDA and HUD
Well,
are not able to be applied for because of the lack of a
yes.
plan.
Well, actually, I think it's WIDA is requiring it, but HUD, there's certain ones under it. So it's those housing authorities in general.
Okay.
So however you wish to make that statement, I would just classify it as like certain grants.
Right.
So
So,
it should read Hannah indicated it would help with WIDA and HUD funding.
Well, but I guess the important part is we can't even apply.
It's more
So
than
that, so that certain grants
Required?
are,
yeah, it's required for certain.
that in order to apply for certain grants under WIDA and HUD,
Indicated
that a plan is
is
required.
required for,
And it has to be updated at least within a 10-year span.
Right. But that's addressed other places.
Yeah.
So that we don't need to.
yeah.
There is mud, Morgan. Okay, any other changes or concerns with the minutes? Okay, looking for a motion to accept. Well, George already has a first for that,
well, we
with those exceptions.
changes, but
Right,
if no one objects, I'll include those changes.
okay, have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Kay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, nay? Motion carries. Number 5, public input session feedback, public engagement summary. Correct.
Thank you. I have a summary of the public engagement in your packet. I just sort of started out with a schedule at the top. Then it's just a summary of the public engagement being hosted at various locations throughout the county. And questions for people to provide written and verbal comment. And these are the places where the list of bullets there, and the list of places where it was posted for public notification. And then the next page is how many residents showed up. So we had 35 residents. Vernon County attended the public engagement meetings. 54 comments were recorded. This feedback was sorted according to the applicable comprehensive plan elements below. And
Where on the report are you on?
Page two, in
Page
the back
two.
of the first page,
Page 35 residents.
Oh, I see.
the first paragraph, yeah.
and then that this was presented to the steering committee at their September 11th meeting. So the engagement overview, I think probably most of you saw this before, but essentially it was 10 minutes introduction. We're talking about who's there. Everyone was introducing themselves. MRPC staff, Vernon Comps, comprehensive plans, commission members, and other Vernon County staff. Then we had a 15 and 20-minute comp plan presentation. Then we had 30-minute gallery walk where people could look at the posters of the goals and objectives. And then the attendees were able to answer questions and provide feedback through written, verbal, and email also. So below are the verbatim recorded comments. Some were from written, some were from staff recording note. So if anything sounds funny, it's just, I wrote down what people said.
And some of these are reoccurring, correct?
Yep, there's, I put a 2 behind that they're reoccurring or repetitive. So I sorted them according to the comprehensive plan element and what they were related to. So what, you want to just take 5 or 10 minutes to read through all those and see what we think? So I guess my overall plan with this is to bring these to you and see if any of the goals need to be amended or changed or added. And we can go through that part now, or if there's anything that anybody heard that was real strong comment. I have a couple ideas that I put into the goals, but I'll give you those after we discuss it or read it or talk about it however you like.
For some reason, we couldn't get this before the meeting, so we don't have to read it.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's on my before.
Online. You got an email?
Like email.
yeah. I'm pretty sure, I think you're copied on
I
it.
do try to send these things out because I know they are kind
Yeah.
of dense and complex.
Oh, thank you.
It was on Friday at
Yeah, I got it.
11:53 a.m.
Oh, yeah, the 5 documents. I guess I missed this one.
Just off and the karst topography came up a lot, and I think if we could throw that in somewhere, it'd be appropriate.
That just came up in Reed's stuff,
Yeah, just at the one that I was at.
Right.
A hot topic.
because it wasn't anywhere else.
Okay.
That's where I'm, don't know if we want to change things because it's one person leading the, not saying that we shouldn't address it later, but
So that was in Reedstown. That is definitely a hot topic. Here's actually from a hazard mitigation plan from Goodhue County in Minnesota. They have all their parts, they have all their sinkholes, landmark. And I saw Crawford County has a nice online viewer of that. So I think essentially that gives the baseline of, okay, these are our sinkholes. What can we do to sort of protect those? Or I don't know, what do you think a land use thing could
Is
be?
Fountain in Goodhue? Not to get off topic too much. Fountain, the sinkhole capital of the world?
How could it be with Florida?
Yeah, you've never been through Fountain then.
Oh, I've been to Florida a lot, though.
So I put the karst under the cultural and natural resources for
Yeah.
protecting water quality.
Yeah.
I heard it's sinking every few days. Very exciting.
And Crawford, did they find some funding to do that study?
Yeah, that was partially done by a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
The Crawford Stewardship Project.
And then under agricultural, there's a couple of karst ones also.
Mm-hmm.
They got all the feedlots mapped out on that too.
Oh, yeah, they do, yeah.
Yeah, on that map.
Mhm.
Good Hughes County.
Yeah.
So overall, a lot of this stuff is what the goal is, what we're to have.
Mhm.
And it's,
No.
It's been kind of interesting to have the members of the.
It's about- Yeah. It was about 4
well, it
per
was
session.
2 or 3, unless it was Westby. That was the only one that there was above.
No, I'm just saying.
It's kind of
Well,
one that's
Well,
six.
3,
6, I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you go to the second session, Elizabeth? Anybody there?
Just 3.
Just 3.
Others, but.
Right. Okay, Jack, you said you had some ideas for what you wanted to change.
So what I saw under land use,
It is not popular.
no, it isn't. I had, I probably had without zoning to prevent unwanted communities being next to each other. So this is a big thing in Reedstown. They're really for zoning. That's farmland preservation ordinance to provide opportunity for farmers to receive tax credits. We kind of already did that. And
What was the first one for land use again?
adapt zoning to prevent unwanted uses next to each other. Sort of residential and industrial or ag, a little bit separated.
What kind of zoning did you call that?
I didn't call that any zoning. I just, that was kind of clear that they wanted to be able to separate it from. They mentioned.
Well, I thought you said some word ahead of zoning. That's what I didn't understand.
Adopt.
Adopt. Oh, I thought you said that. I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, we don't have that authority. As a committee, we can't adopt zoning
Mm,
for what we're doing.
So
You could say
Promote?
encourage, but yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, if we're gonna stay consistent, we can't change what we're doing.
Sure.
Right. For one town particularly. That's their baby.
Right, because then, yeah, I mean, each one kind of had their own topic that they felt strong about, and it wasn't consistent anywhere in that way. And
I'll change those to promote instead of adapt.
There you go.
If we want to go with that. I had another one, encourage each township to host a community picnic to rebuild social fabric and foster collaboration and communication. That came from the town of Forest.
Yeah, of course.
I put that in the intergovernmental relationships and.
Well, but my concern with that is, what if a township wants to do something different?
Yeah.
I mean, now you're limiting things.
About events? Well.
community gathering.
Yeah.
People wanted that.
Well, but then you're
Let up to
encouraging it for
encourage.
townships. What about villages, cities,
Yep. You can
the
amend
county?
that to say-
I'm just saying, you're limiting your plus specifying an event, people could do something else.
Yep, absolutely. I just, these are just notes from the feedback, so. Recommend LiDAR sinkhole study, so to determine the location of areas that could jeopardize water quality. So we were talking about it with our GIS techs. We could have a older LiDAR study and then a newer LiDAR study. So LiDAR is a radar.
Light detection and ranging, like sonar uses sound waves, radar uses radio waves, LiDAR uses light pulses from an airplane to get a highly detailed understanding of the topography of the ground. And so when it hits its first resistance, it might be a tree canopy or a building. It sends a second light pulse down to the ground so you can understand the contours. At Vernon County, we get LiDAR every 10 years. It's quite an expensive undertaking. So the first time that we were able to acquire it was in 2010. We also have 2020 LiDAR data. The next time that we anticipate is 2030, as long as we can square away the funding for that.
So if you compare with this concept, where compare the two levels, and you could see where the ground is sunk.
And it will be pretty interesting going forward when we talk about potential decommissioning of dams and changing of the landscape and how that impacts, not only with LiDAR, but with aerial imagery, which Vernon County receives every 5 years. So going back to 2005, 10, 15, 20, we're going to get our new aerial image next year. Will be a flyover in spring. We do it when there's new thaw, so we can actually get a better understanding of the land.
Slightly off topic, but in 2020 or 2010, did they find any like new cultural sites using LiDAR? I know it's like that's often they'll find like, oh, that's an effigy mound that we weren't aware of.
We have acquired prior to me being in this role. My predecessor acquired from the Historical Society where all of those are located, the mounds, and it's not publicly shareable. So we do have an archive of it in-house.
Just curious if new stuff was found that wasn't aware of.
But I'm not sure what year that was acquired, and I'm sure things have come up since then.
For sure.
Yeah. I can't answer that specifically.
Totally top
All right.
secret.
Well,
Yeah, time on hands, you can turn on the hillside shade layer on our public maps and
And you
scroll through, and some of those stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
You know, you can really pick them out. Saying.
Where about in the county?
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I'm not asking.
Can't tell.
you can look.
Western, Eastern, Kickapoo Valley?
GPS coordinates.
Yeah, don't make us.
Let's go on. Yeah.
And the last goal, and maybe thought we could alter from community engagement, was actively promote regenerative agriculture to Vernon County existing farmers through education, incentives, and inclusion in farmland preservation and conservation practice. So I will say this is a small subset of people, but they gave, there was a small set of people there that gave a lot of good feedback. So do what you will with that information. Those are just the things that I saw. And if you want to alter any of these goals or just forget any of those goals, you can do that. But I think that's what we saw from the public engagement. And I think you were there for almost all of them. You were probably there for more than I was, actually. Yeah.
I just missed one. Yeah.
And if anyone else, has anything else you felt was important that came out of there, probably now is the time to add it to the plan. So
I just don't know if we should change what we had based on that little input. If we find later that we want to make that a goal as far as what we want to work on, yes. But as far as where we're at, I don't know, in my opinion, if we want to alter things from what we had based on that small of a sampling, but.
I mean, I get that, but it's also like, it's the only sampling, it's not like we're going to get.
Well, and that doesn't mean that we're ignoring what they said, but that can be the next step if that's what we, the car stuff, that's part of every discussion we have about water quality. I mean, that's built into the conversation. So to list it specifically, I don't know if that's necessary.
well, the more overlap you have with different plans and different policies, probably more likely it's going to happen.
Or you could apply for funding if it's outlined in there.
Yes, that's right. It gives everybody it. Staff can't really apply for grants unless it's, deemed appropriate, and they can get in trouble if not.
Well, but that's where the goal, I guess my understanding was that was where the goals would come then if we want to search for funding and do these things. Because there's 500,000 things you could do. But we don't know what our priority is as of yet. I don't know. Thoughts? Come on, people, quit being quiet. You haven't been yet.
It's difficult at this point in the process to take a small number of samples and then go back to something we've spent probably not enough time in my opinion, but certainly what, 6 months developing to then in the morning of, a meeting, we just suddenly make some changes based on a limited number of comments. It seems to be not, doesn't seem the appropriate path to me.
Well, I'll just say that this is one of the legs of the stool. So
Right.
we've done surveys, we've done all the other public engagement. This is one of the things that comes out. People, you're going to hear different things than you heard in the survey. The survey was a very Viroqua town city centric. We got a lot of responses from there. This is a different group. I don't think we got a lot of people from Kickapoo to answer the survey. So it may seem like it's last minute, but it's part of an overall picture of public engagement, which is messy and not very always, well thought out, or not, I shouldn't say thought out, but you never know what you're going to get. So now we have something, and it may seem like last minute, but it's still, this process is always changing until the very end. It could change in the county board meeting. So they may have some requests that, last minute changes. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't think the process is done until it's done.
Allison, did you have?
I just had a clarifying question, because I read what the work you all did, and then I was kind of waiting to review the summary, but I don't see anything on here that you missed in your original outline. So I guess my clarifying question is it important to, it seems like a lot of these could fall into subcategories under titles. And is that necessary for grant writing, or can you identify it? Like, here's the goal that we're meeting and it would fall under this. Because I feel like, and I could be wrong, I think the feedback's always good and you have the feedback, but you could outline and then sub-outline, you could parse this down so far down, and then when you stop, because
Well, that
I'm
was,
just looking for is when I read this, did I see something that you missed? And I don't see anything unless but I'm new to all the work. I don't see anything on this list that made me think,
That's right.
oh, you guys missed this topic, so we should add it.
right.
Maybe-
Well, that's where I'm at. I think what we had is,
Yeah.
It's just you could
Well-
put it in different buckets.
I guess if it was brought up at more than one meeting, I guess I would put more weight to it. But because one brought it up and was vocal, does that mean, I'm not convinced that that's good. I mean, with the amount of time we spent with all this, like I said, once we get this, we can set our priorities and what we want to do. And as we set priorities, that can help with the funding if that's what it needs. But to change things now concerns me, but that's just mine. Cassie?
Yeah, and just to note on that, it is a pretty small subset compared to our survey that we put out and the number of responses we got there. And I would agree with Allison and you, Charlie, that I didn't see anything that we necessarily missed kind of in each of these comments.
Well, and I want to make it clear, we're not listening to what the people are saying. I just don't know at this point if we need to change anything, but keep it in the back of our mind so that the first set of priorities may be something that was brought up that way.
And I agree with everything that everybody said. Just the whole process of this public engagement was to bring these goals and objectives and validate them through the community. So it just shows that we've done that. We haven't missed anything. If we want to add the car stuff, then it shows we're being responsive to what we heard in the process. So if we're happy, we're happy. That's good.
Come on, people, you gotta make stand.
That was just the whole concept of the process of making these giant posters.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of the discussion, because that's what they kind of turn into is discussion sessions, every single one of them.
Yeah, it was like a focus group.
Yeah, yeah,
In a circle.
yeah, exactly.
I found it interesting in Westview, it's someone really fixated on bike lanes, and it's in here.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of the stuff, yeah, and that's what my point was. A lot of the stuff that was brought up, or the vast majority of it, fit right into what we already had done.
And it validates what you've done.
Right.
So that's
But she kept talking about it, it's in here.
Yeah.
But you're not going to forget about bike lanes.
Right.
I will say the posters were just way too many words.
Yes.
I wish people did not engage with them much. And, you know, to George's point, maybe we should have like walked through all the goals. It just didn't seem like that would be feasible. So lesson learned, maybe it would have more infographics or something bigger. There was just too many words on these posters.
Well, and it seemed like the people that came had a topic
They
they
did.
wanted to talk
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
Infographics.
And you
And,
had to show them where on the goals
yeah,
that was reflected.
right.
So they were useful in that way, but
I also mentioned, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to share a random comment that that isn't specific in any of the line items, but I anticipated, perhaps unfairly, that we would be met with some hostility or angst from the community, knowing, having been here for a while and having some institutional knowledge of how this went down last time. And that was surprisingly the opposite of that. In fact, Charlie, our chairman, was thanked at one point for going forward with this process. And I heard on a few occasions at different locations that this is important work to be done. And I don't think it fits in any one category, but I just think it underscores the work that you're doing and it merits mentioning.
and I will just generally say, people that came were so thoughtful, so polite and kind, and like they sat down in a conversation about things that they're concerned about. It was really pretty cool. So there was no negative comments at all, which seems, you think there'd be some, but
I admit I did think that there would be some.
Right. Well, but with the discussion, help them understand, you know, as part of that education piece we talked about, you know, when we talk about the process and what we've been working on and what we're doing and where we're at and what is next or could be next, I guess until it gets approved, we can't say next. Then they seem to understand, you know, the process better.
okay. So I guess in summary, do we want to add that karst in then or somewhere in the goal, or?
What would our goal be with karst?
Right.
We have to take it into account with things that we do, but what are we?
Well, here's
supposed to do
Anyway,
what I said before was, just read the goal. Recommend a LiDAR sinkhole study to determine the location of areas that could jeopardize water quality. So you'd
but
identify,
the LiDAR study is done regardless of what we do.
Right. We don't.
well, it's not related to sinkholes.
No, we don't go through.
Like, for example, this
For that.
map that Goodhue County has identifies all of its sinkholes and all of its feedlots.
Yeah, feedlots are on there. So basically what they're trying to do here is they're trying to identify where the feedlots are, making sure the runoff doesn't get to the sinkholes. And
But
that's,
my concern with that is, oh, you say sinkholes for this, well, the next person's gonna want it.
Cultural asset mapping.
Right, well, I'm just saying, it doesn't end with that. That's where if we can stay broad and then
The little.
pick our battles as we go.
So that's Minnesota. This is a sinkhole.
Well, you would hope that when you're licensing large feedlots, that they would take into account the karst topography. I don't find that when the state of Wisconsin licenses CAPOs, that they give a damn about anything except here's your license. I mean, we can identify these, but I'm not sure.
is their application complete? That's
That's it. Right.
you know,
That's it.
it's
You
kind of a,
violate the regulations,
Have
you
you
can go
paid
5
enough
years
money?
operating without a license.
Okay.
And they're still going to give you another license.
they look into the water usage a lot from the wells. I know they put a lot of weight on that, but
Perhaps it might,
yeah.
I'm hearing that you don't want to make
Yeah,
the changes, you know, as is. But because it has been brought up, I understand that you're raising the point for us to consider. Maybe more of a generic statement about supporting or encouraging acquisition of data to help with this, because it's not just the LiDAR data that can help with karst, but also sinkholes and cultural, you know, assets on the landscape, you know, effigy mounds, et cetera. That if you had a generic statement about acquiring.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, like, you know, encourage the identification of those areas to help guide, development or sustainable development. And then, but also, you know, it could also fall under that, wherever we have the water contamination issue too. So it really, you know, you could have it in under a couple different elements.
The reason why I would want to underscore the importance of encouraging data acquisition such as LiDAR or aerial is because that hasn't always been the case at Vernon County. And so to have that underscored somewhere shows that shows its importance in a number of categories.
We have conducting a survey under goal 3, objective 3. Could we also include that up above where we want to, excuse me, protect and conserve soil and water, that you do a survey, conduct a survey, could we have that covered as well?
LiDAR, you'd have to have data acquisition in order to do the survey work. So I would say part and parcel, acquire, encourage data acquisition and, any study from it.
I have that draft. This one? That's just, I printed this on. So it's
Age
just
natural.
our draft that we had worked on.
So I was taking the sentence about goal 3 and number 3, if we could put that in with protect and conserve soil and water, that you're also going to do a intensive survey.
Well, we can't say we're going to do anything. We can
No,
encourage
encourage,
or
yeah,
support
encourage.
or.
Well, this map is impressive. See the areas with the probability of sinkholes and the amount of apparently feedlots, especially in areas where they are, although one would ask then, are they then not allowed to have any, what is a feedlot, by the way? I mean, there's a lot of them in this county. But I think perhaps identifying them would be a good tool.
I like the terms for the last conversation though, because with the decommissioning of the dams and whatever, we might find things that you wouldn't find otherwise, so.
What was the language you used with gathering the information?
I would recommend promote data acquisition.
Yeah.
Promote GIS data acquisition. And, encourage use for potential studies.
Yeah, I'm thinking my folks have a property that's got a big sinkhole on it, and they got a call from the DNR one day, like, hey, we just want to come in and check this out, make sure it's fine. And so I'm assuming the DNR has a bunch of information that we can pull from too. So I like that language rather than starting from scratch.
Already. So think about GS data acquisition to encourage use. What was that last? Promote GS data acquisition and encourage use for potential studies.
From the data.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure promote's the right word, in my opinion. You actually want to get it, don't you? Not
Yeah.
just promote it.
One more time.
Obtain,
Promote.
But again,
Yeah.
we aren't funding anything, so we gotta be careful on the wording.
but if DNR is already calling people, what do
I
they?
mean, that's just an anecdote. I'm assuming
Yeah.
they've got information.
Yeah, well, they must have. Why would they
Yeah.
call?
It's probably fairly limited
Well,
though. They're only gonna have the major.
But if you're saying obtain GIS information, that doesn't mean you can't get it from another source. It's not like you're creating
Right,
it
you
yourself.
can have it your
So
own.
again, it's how you're looking at the wording.
Promote, when we use the word should. The county should obtain GIS information to assure safe water in our county or something like that. We should have more information. The more
Yeah, we
information we
should.
have, the better decisions.
Especially if they're using it already.
Promote what's, promote that. I agree with you.
Do we want to tie that into water use though, or do you want to tie it into something else?
It's much broader than water.
Right.
It's probably, it could be under natural resources, it could be under land use.
I was going to land use, yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
Land use.
Where under land use would it fit? With our goals, the way worded the way they are.
What's your data?
The land use is a lot about development
Right.
in general. It seems like you're trying to protect natural resources with this information. It seems like that would be under the natural resources.
That probably should be.
Preserve system agriculture and forest land. This would be a goal, but that would be the objective. Protect and conserve natural areas.
including wetland, wildlife.
Well, but we're
Protect and
talking,
conserve soil and water resources ground and surface.
to me, that would be the broader, the better.
That's what you're looking for with that information. You're trying to protect the groundwater from going in a sinkhole, or the manure from going in a sinkhole, entering the groundwater.
Can you link it up with
Or
number
nutrients
goal
or
1, number
whatever.
5 somehow?
Mhm.
Not that
I
either.
think you'd be better off to make a number six.
That's
Keep it-
a number.
Yep,
Yeah.
or put
Yeah.
it higher on the list, whatever you want to do. It's probably pretty important.
Yeah, you would hope that our number one about policies, procedures, that would be informed by data that we have. So
Mhm.
The data before you can do it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty
You want me to
important.
read that, the initial goal I started out with?
Right.
Recommended LiDAR sinkhole study to determine the location of areas that could jeopardize water quality. This came out of the read sound. This is.
So recommend data acquisition.
Okay.
Of
Or specific.
recommend,
Instead of specific light,
yeah,
Right.
because I think aerial could be just as important
Right.
and or other data sets that we aren't included.
Well, and if you go through the DNR, they might have something that you don't know about either.
Yeah. Mhm.
What about geological,
Mhm.
like in lacrosse?
Mhm.
Because they do water technology, they have water technology that they
Right.
do testing, but.
That's, I'm sure they have real helpful layers that could
Yeah.
tie in because they're gonna have the bedrocks type of stuff, how the bedrocks mapped out and
acquisition of
stuff.
GIS
And
data.
some bedrocks got a higher probability for.
So take up the recommend. Recommend acquisition or just acquisition? Recommend acquisition of.
It went from promote and then it went to potentially should. The county should.
Fun. I'm just kidding.
We're getting there. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. It's encouraging to know
Well-
how important it is for folks.
Well, we could use the word should
Mhm.
in that context because it technically wouldn't cost anything extra other than
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
somebody's normal duties to contact those places to get that information. So,
And we're already doing LiDAR every 10 years. We're already doing air photos every 5.
And we're part of a consortium for the digital orthophotography that we acquire. So it comes down in cost, buying in bulk.
did that answer your question, Jack? Should?
I think so. So it should be county should acquire GIS data that we want to go with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
County
You should have. Whatever.
acquire GIS data to determine the location of areas that could jeopardize water quality. But these a bit of
It's
it's a big,
fairly limited on what it can do.
okay.
The use, the intention of acquiring GIS data is so that you can do studies to follow from it or use that data to inform policies. So,
Or the
It's-
public.
or the public.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to inform, forthcoming, studies, research policies. I don't know how to have a catch-all phrase. Just use it as a foundation for informing, and
To guide future.
development or
Development, right.
Protection.
decision-making
Protection
process.
of.
Yeah.
The guide, you just got to, what was it, to,
Guide future-
the guide to future decision-making, processes.
Okay, so we got that. We'll take the rest of those ones that I mentioned out.
You have it, Morgan? No?
To
Nope.
guide
Okay,
future
so-
decision-making processes.
all right, this is how we're wording it. County should acquire GIS data to determine sensitive areas to protect, or not to protect, to guide future decision-making. That's what we're going with.
Right.
Don't you want to have it be related to water quality then?
Water quality and other.
Other stuff.
Right.
I think their concern is they
Protection of
don't want to
natural
limit
resources.
it to that because it could, when you're looking at the data, you might find something that's not water.
Because
It
they
is
go-
under the
yeah,
goal of
yeah.
protecting and conserve soil and water.
So,
And that's why I went with sensitive areas, because it could
Yeah.
be more than just sinkholes.
Right.
It could be streams, it could
Yeah,
be,
but, yeah,
you know,
Green bank.
springs, it could be seeps, it could be wetlands, it could be all kinds of different stuff. So sensitive areas kind of captures all that.
or cultural features, you
I
know.
was gonna
Yeah,
say
exactly.
historic things.
Mhm. So it's kind of a catch-all.
Everybody good with that?
can you read that one more time, Matt, just so I have it?
County should acquire GIS data to determine sensitive areas to guide future decision-making.
You got it.
Get it? Wow. That was
A lot.
great.
So that
Thanks.
whole time.
Mr. Chair.
That might not be right.
I'll try to echo and not be totally excited.
The changes you're recommending before we decide.
Yes, one more time. Yep, one more time.
Got lost in that. I'm not sure who I am anymore.
Have we decided this one issue? I mean, are you saying we should wait to decide this one about what we just have to?
Oh, you would just asked if we were fine with dumping everything else, and I would just like to hear.
No, I don't know about that, but if the chair wants to declare there's a consensus to adopt this, remember, we need to have either a motion or the chair can say, does anybody object? And if no one objects, then by consensus, we've adopted this, but we need to. have
Why don't we integrate,
or?
Oh, let's do.
Are we
one
No,
at a-
we want to amend the draft plan right now, I think.
Are we going to do all of them or just this one?
No, let me
Just one right now, I think.
Okay,
if we're agreed on that one.
if I may, I think what we want to do is integrate all this community feedback into the goals, and I'll bring it back next time with a clean copy for everybody to say, here are the goals and the objectives for this plan. And then you can vote
And then
on
it
it.
gives time to review,
Right.
because you'll send it out, give it time to
You're
review.
going to make changes in the whole plan and then send them out, and we got to go through and find out where you made these changes? No, I don't think so.
You have it, that'll be a different color.
Yeah, the only
Always got these. Is that
one we
okay?
have so far is one that we just wordsmithed there.
I'm just.
I appreciate your.
So yeah, it will be in, anything new will be in red.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go from the top? Under land use element, object, under the goal of preserving existing agriculture and forest land. I had adopt zoning to prevent unwanted uses. So what we heard in Reedstown was, people said, oh, there's a lot of development coming in, there's things like that we want to keep separate. So that was related to that.
So we were going to change it from adopt to.
We were Xing.
We were just I thought we'd get rid of it because when you started getting into zoning.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of ahead of where we're at,
All right,
in my
okay.
opinion.
I just wanted to reflect that was a really big thing in Reedstown.
Right.
People kept mentioning that, so that statement reflects that.
Okay.
Okay, and then the next one is adopt farmland preservation ordinance to provide opportunity for farmers to receive tax credit. We did that.
It's
Do
already,
we want to have that be in the goal? Well, I mean, it's an implementation strategy of the goals, right? So I don't think we need to include that.
it's already done.
And then under the intergovernmental relationship and coordination element, encourage each township to host a community picnic, rebuild populations.
No,
Okay.
That's not our county's purpose.
That's-
And then, so the only one is this, the one we just wordsmithed.
Okay.
Okay,
As a consensus, we just adopt that, amend the plan,
Okay.
draft plan at this
Sure.
point.
Okay, and you've got the wording, Morgan?
Yep.
So out of all the proposals from Jack, we're scratching everything except for under ag, natural and cultural resources, goal 1, objective, adding number 6, which is
the county should,
As worded.
Okay, can I ask, though, did you want that to be number 1? Because you need that before you can do these other things. Yeah, there was a discussion that, Kay mentioned you have to have a lot of this information before you can do the other thing. So it's just a matter of renumbering. It's just a matter of renumbering, but
I have no objection to renumber.
Okay, we're up to number
Make it
one.
number 1 and renumber everything
because
else.
doesn't that define all the decisions
Yeah,
that follow them?
it should, yes.
That's a valid point.
Okay, so under number 1,
Just
renumbering the rest with that wording. Does anybody have any objection to that?
So we've adopted by
So
consensus.
that's been adopted by consensus.
okay, one more thing before we depart the goals. At the end of your packet, I have examples of intergovernmental cooperation goals and objectives. I was told that someone, and my boss said that we should beef up our intergovernmental goal, cooperation goals.
Okay, but if we're gonna do that, I need a motion to pull that forward, because that's on the agenda farther. Discuss it.
Yeah.
We can visit it later. I think it's kind of related to the goals since we're dug into there.
Okay, get a motion to move number 8 up to current. A motion by Nathaniel, second by Sandy. All in favor, aye. Anyone opposed, nay? Go for it.
Okay, so these are examples from another county comp plan. Eau Claire, you'll see Eau Claire in there once. So just so you know, these goals, I know the planning staff there, they did a good job, and I think it's sort of relevant to our county, to the Vernon County. Not too urban, it's not too suburban, there's some rural there too, So these are examples of intergovernmental goals around cooperation. So if you'd like to add any of these into the plan, feel free, or we can just strike these.
Yep.
Mhm.
And if you like any of these, we can just verbatim move them into the goals.
Could we also table this, or it's table's not the right word, but give us time to compare the two?
Sure.
When are we supposed to have this plan ready? Help me with the timeline.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I'm just kidding.
And I have it.
I thought it was Monday.
I had look.
That was too easy.
This schedule was shooting for adoption in March 8th, but I think we're a little ahead of that schedule.
Okay.
We're at the policies and land use strategies portion already.
So there's
We're kind of got our goals. Some of the land use strategies are out there already. So, I'd say probably December, January, probably for adoption.
So we just bring it back
So
for
we can
next
bring it
month
back
and give
in
everybody a chance to look at it.
Yep, they'll give you the goals, the land use strategies.
Oh, revised.
Yeah, if we want to change anything or add. Is that the idea? Okay.
Yep.
Right, that all right with
I
everyone?
just need to think, because like the proactively address land conflicts.
That's a big one, right?
That's all.
These are all big ones,
Well,
but
that's what
they're,
I'm saying, is for us to just
Yeah.
randomly say, that's a big bite to for what we
We don't have hardly anything here.
No, I know, it's completely different.
I think we gotta figure out where our border is or. if Minnesota-
Oh, my gosh, that's so relevant.
Okay, so is that okay though, Jack?
yeah, that's fine.
Because some of these are some pretty
They're just
big
things to think
bites.
about.
Yeah,
They're way
Because
different.
compared to what we have.
The boundary stuff can be a major sticking point with the growth that's happening now. That will probably, so.
Okay, so let's just make sure we add that for next
Shoulder.
agenda then.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. There's that one, and then the next one. Got some big ones here. And these, the next one is just an example for you to review.
Okay, so going on to number 6 on model farmland preservation ordinance discussion.
In your packet, there's 2 model farmland preservation zoning ordinances from the state of Wisconsin. One does not allow non-farm residents. One does. One allows some non-farm residences in the farmland preservation district with a conditional use permit. So,
I like that one better personally, but
and
I wonder how you keep them out.
no, it's funny because I was just looking at La Crosse County farm workers, and they have some districts that are, I'll add them about this too. Some that are base, or they have the mix of this. They have some that are allowed and some that aren't. You know about that, Matt? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I was just looking at their map. I'll ask them about it, but here's the two model ordinances that you could,
Do they have it broken out into different zones, like a egg residential or
they just have
egg two, or
They have-
there's some have egg enterprise?
They have
or
where you can
type
have
of deal.
residents with conditional use permit.
Hmm.
Maybe they're just using the one that allows it, and then they designate that with a, anyways, I'll figure out more about that.
Okay.
So, this isn't something you need to adopt with this plan. It's something you could recommend, say, this plan recommends the, does not allow or one that does allow. So it's just for you to review, to look at, to know what's out there and what you're recommending, what the implications are, what the unintended consequences are, just so that you're all informed about that. Okay.
Putting that on next month, does that give everybody enough time to read it?
Read it, well,
Kind of digest some of it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, another topic for next.
Before you get like a definition or clarification of non-farm.
The definitions are right in the,
Residence is not occupied by an owner relative, or an operator on the farm. I believe it's under definitions there. It's an owner, operator of the farm, a parent or child of the owner, operator, or an individual who earns more than 50% of their gross income from the farm. So if the residence has any of those occupants, then it's a farm residence. If it doesn't, then it's not.
What happens to the employees then?
If they, they're operators of the farm, employees, I don't know if that's a good question. Good question.
Okay, all right, already there's something. in-
Well, it's, you can give definitions, but there's always
I
questions.
know.
and this is the starting point for you and your committee to work from. You don't have to use this whole thing, you can do pieces of it. It's just a model ordinance.
Okay, we'll look.
Well, but an employee would be an individual who earns more than 50% of their income from the farm.
True.
Because that's,
Maybe their wife has a very good job.
Well,
Sorry, I've been in
Well,
that situation.
well, I'm just saying, that's yeah, because it says of his or her gross. It doesn't say family income.
right, it'd be the,
That's the person.
It's the operator. That's what they're trying to
Oh,
point
that-
out.
or employees.
Yeah.
really.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah,
I'm just saying,
No, it's good.
I'm sure
Very
there's some
relevant.
gray areas.
yeah, it's time to get into that whole thing. There's a bunch of
Sure.
crap.
Well, he lives there and he helps me with the farm.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Well, or they live there free
Right. We're supposed
for some labor help.
whether they earn 50% or not.
They have to watch the gate or whatever.
Okay, so for next time then, we'll look at that, mark your questions, and we'll see how much Jack knows.
I don't.
That's right. Give him a
So,
Not listening, I can't figure.
so, yeah,
That's for there.
yep. So the conditional use part of it, I'll just say it's a can of worms. It's a lot to deal with the conditional use permits. You have to have there's a new law, Act 63, that spells out real clearly what you have to have for criteria to approve or deny. And if that conditional use permit meets that, you have to approve it. So it's just foreshadowing. Those conditional use permits are a little tricky.
But you could not draft an ordinance that allowed non-farm residences in the district and have it meet the statute. Is that a correct statement?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not an expert on farmland preservation.
this is for farmland preservation. Then it just wouldn't be considered part of the operation. Correct.
So I guess maybe what you're asking is what qualifies for those conditional uses, and it's
No. That's the point. I don't believe that we should have a quote conditional use process to get it for a person to build a residence on their own farm. That's just my position. So the question is, these are quote model ordinances. Could you have an ordinance, could Vernon County, for example, adopt an ordinance that allowed non-farm residences in agricultural district areas and still meet the statute and be approved by DADCAT? I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Well, that's an important question because mostly this is a state zoning plan. This is not a county drafted. This is something the state, basically out of places of urban areas who want to impose this on us. And they give us a carrot, that is, they give a tax break to some of the residences who farm, and a carrot to those people who like to see regulation of farms in terms of their use of the land. But it does impose a rather strict standard, and then mostly it discriminates against residences in rural areas. Whereas you could have a farm implement dealership in rural areas, that's allowed, but you can't build a residence there unless you jump through these hoops of a very complicated process to get more and more complicated to get a conditional use permit. That's my main concern about this. I mean, townships rely upon property taxes. We don't even have continuing, well, we could ask the population to increase them, but how does farming doesn't produce much property taxes because it's rated at a very low level. So without residences and restricting it, making it a harder process to go through conditional use, get all that stuff, it's just going to limit the amount of residences in rural areas and limit the amount of property tax funding and limit the freedom of people to decide to put a house wherever they want on their land. That's just my position.
I'll ask for clarification on that. I just made myself a note and I'll get back to you on that. Two, I don't see why you couldn't, you could still build a residence, just that parcel wouldn't be eligible for that tax credit. You know what I'm saying?
True. Well,
it doesn't exempt the entire operation.
No, I understand that, but you still got to go through this process, this complicated process to get permission to build this house. And it's every time you add a process, it slows things down. It adds more expense. It discourages the process. But I appreciate if you could.
Yeah. Expert on parkland preservation, ordinance, like your organization.
We do.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that some of our communities already have similar things in theirs. And so when they have it, they have subdivision ordinances within theirs that they can, which they do have conditional use clauses for, but they have, depending on the community, some have a simplified process of doing it to where you can, but they still have terms in there that say you need 200 feet that parallels the road that it's going to be off of. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't meet, well, then you have to subdivide further in your property. You can't do it. Then you get into whether there's an easement or not. So we already have communities that have these in place, and it's a simple process to go to their town hall meeting and apply for basically the 181 application. Both out. And it's just a matter of saving space for a lot of our communities.
You're talking about a variance, basically.
Yeah, just a variance in that.
But, and I think George is asking something different. He was just asking if that parcel would be still eligible for farmland preservation, right?
Not that it's eligible, just whether the ordinance could be written to allow perhaps a number of non-farm residences in these districts without going through the conditional use permit process. In other words, as a right, just like a farm implement dealership, you have a right to have that in anywhere in a farmland preservation district, but you don't have the right to have non-farm residences. I'm saying we should equate residences with farm implements. That is, it should be in section. No, boy, this is a complicated ordinance, but I think it's D rather than E is the, yeah.
On October 2nd, we will have Rebecca Roberts from UW Stevens Point, in the Center of Land Use, and she's coming to discuss a few things about land use mapping, and we can cover kind of like a general zoning and farmland preservation. She can answer a few questions on that as well. Or provide some examples of things that have been done around the state in similar community settings. So I've had that discussion with her. We will be in the county board room for that. It'll be starting at 3 in the afternoon. So I haven't really posted anything out, but I wanted to let the commission know we are working through that with her, and she's going to come provide education on that. So she is available as well to answer questions through. So she'll go over what she does, because she is the statewide specialist.
What was the date again?
October 2nd. So Wednesday.
At
3:00,
At 3, yep. 3 to 5.
County boardroom.
She's got about an hour and a half worth of probably content that she will go over, as well as
Awesome.
answering questions.
That was in the county board.
Yeah, yeah.
To be clear, just if you're looking at the ordinance, the model ordinance that allows non-farm residences, on page 4, there's paragraph C and D, that is, I'm sorry, not C and D, and D, and then on page 5 is E. D is permitted uses. That's agricultural related uses, such as an implement dealer, and then E is conditional uses. I'm asking whether residences can be moved out of conditional uses into permitted uses. That's my question.
And who will know the answer to that?
Tim Jackson, that's who I was gonna get a hold of, and he's the one I've been in contact with before. That's why I wrote a note to get a hold of Tim.
So that would go along with number 4 there, which is the non-farm residents. This as approval of the cluster. So that would be different. So now, are you talking the land is like, say, a farm, somebody sells off a section for somebody to build? Or are you talking keeping the land and then the son is building a house on there, but keeping it in the farm name?
That's different.
Both?
On the farm, in the farm name. Well, normally it would be sold, and I guess it starts getting into complicated. Can you even sell a parcel for building
Well, but that's where I was confused, because that's two kind of different topics.
Right. I think, well, from my experiences, I was involved with an estate that wanted to sell a house, but they couldn't sell the house with the land. Nobody wanted all that land, and so they had to go to the plan commission, present separating this, getting exception to the farmland preservation Stark Township. And then the plan commission voted, and they had to go to a town board meeting. It ended up costing about $1,000 in fees and so forth, for attorneys and everything else to get all this stuff done, just to be able to sell the residents separately from some farmland.
I don't think it would be hard to write it in if the land was sold, entitled in a different name. It would be a lot cleaner than trying to say we're going to build a house on the farm, because then it can change. It is that for right now, but then if it becomes the son then moves off and hired man moves in, now it changes. I mean, it's not as clean as it is if you sell off a section.
If you survey it off and sell it, and it's a pretty clean process, and it shouldn't be that difficult or costly.
Right. And I could see adding that. That would be simple enough to.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to.
Yeah.
I'll look at the see more. I'm just.
The remaining parcel just needs to be big enough to qualify.
Right, but then we got the other things, but to me, that would be a lot cleaner way of doing it, and they could bypass all that.
Yeah.
But if it's gonna stay on the farm name, that.
Yes.
Because what it is now may not be what it is later.
You're right.
Which then confuses things.
I think, yes, I think if you convert it, well, that's a good question, and I'm not even sure. But
Okay.
only read this a couple of times, and I'll read it some more.
Okay, so let's, we're gonna bring it back next month.
Yeah.
Because there's too many what ifs.
And then your meeting would come up.
Yep.
That one, and it would be better
Speaking of that, there's a couple townships with farmland preservation. Can somebody rattle those off for me? 'Cause it
Yeah,
might be
I don't
nice
have
to-
the map.
Well, that's on the map.
Harmony, Bergen, Coon, Christiana, Viroqua.
So do they have ordinances or something that we
Yes.
could look at?
That's
They-
what I'm hoping to find. Yeah.
Yes, they would.
In this conversation, I wanted to follow up with what you were asking for clarification, because it's my understanding that typically a county would have a comprehensive plan, and farmland preservation has to coincide, or it has to, you have to mirror language. But now that we do not have a comprehensive plan, but we do have 5 townships that do have farmland preservation, if we're crafting something, it's got to then translate to what's already on the books. Is that?
I think of their typical grandmother again.
Yes, right.
Some of those, and that's, they don't have like if you're talking about their zoning ordinances, I know they don't have common parcel sizes.
Right.
Like Christiana's 2, I think. Baroque was like a half acre or something like that. They have
Lawrence would probably
their
know.
minimum sizes. Yeah.
Yeah, they changed their acreage.
Did they? Baroque did? Okay, yeah. And so I'm just saying they were all over the board before. So it's kind of hard to,
Now it complicates things for us going forward, now jumping in after the fact.
So for us,
but I mean, if they adopt or they come into ours, then they're just gonna have those, I guess, legal non-conforming parcels, is what they'll end up being. So they're okay, they're allowed to exist, as they were approved before.
But not to change, probably.
It would be a process to change things. Yeah.
They already have an ordinance. They wouldn't have to adopt the county.
They don't have to. I'm just saying if they did, and some of them have already expressed that they absolutely 100% would.
Did you get the answer? It's Hamburg, Harmony, Kuhn, Christiana, Viroqua, and Stark.
Oh, I said Hamburg, not Bergen. I said Bergen and not Hamburg, sorry. Other way around.
Stark, Harmony, Bergen, Viroqua, Kuhn, and Christiana.
not Bergen.
No, not Bergen.
Hamburg, Harmony, Kuhn, Christiana, Viroqua, and Stark.
You said Harmony, not Hammond.
Harmony and Hamburg, both of them, yeah.
So somebody should be able to produce the ordinance or the guidelines or whatever you would call them for these towns.
Ben probably has them in his computer.
Yeah, and could we have them so that we know what we're talking about?
Ask them to bring them.
That'd be fair.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do this the state one, right? So like to cross-reference them.
Yep. See what's up.
I'll see if I can get those put together and then email them out to everybody. I know I have some of them already.
Thank you. That would be good.
So we'll just tie that into bringing this ordinance discussion back up for next month then?
Mhm.
Please.
Okay.
Matt,
Yeah,
I can go through and put the things that are common, things that are not.
okay.
I'd be voted kind of better.
That's
Okay.
wonderful.
But the common thing, there's a lot that are common.
Yeah.
I've been a lot size of 2 acres, pretty common. And then go through the things that are different.
Okay,
So
That'd be
Yeah.
great. Yep.
Perfect.
Be wonderful.
Okay, so is that it for the farmland preservation ordinance discussion?
So, I just want to, do we not want to get too much into writing the ordinance? Because I think Corp Council will probably take whatever we do and change it. Is that correct? How far do we want to get into that, into the weeds on that?
Well, we may want to specify, if we're going to endorse farmland preservation, we may want to put some specifications in that. But yes, I doubt we're going to quote adopt an ordinance here. We don't have the authority for one thing.
We'll make a recommendation for an ordinance, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then we can say whether we want certain qualities or we may
Right.
decide to leave that to the county board entirely or to the process after the comprehensive
Or
plan.
which one we like
Mm-hmm.
to get closer to, and then they can write it to fit what we need.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, number 7, future land use maps.
Okay. You want to go first, Malik? Or
Yeah, I can. There was I believe it was Ben last month had recommended that we show the commission what we have on file already. And he was looking for specific maps that I was unaware of that we had and or data. So I did compile a very brief slides of some of the data that we have. So I'll just start with showing you what we have that we're working with right now.
What we want to share,
Yep.
so everybody online can see.
Can you define what it says greenfield featured land use? Can you just tell me what these definitions are? Com is commercial
Yeah, commercial,
and res is residential.
residential.
What's MHC?
Mobile home community.
Really? Okay, thank you.
I would not have guessed that.
It's just the one. Looks like it's just the one here.
Monique, yeah. Where's these two?
Yeah.
You know what? I am sharing my screen if that's all right. I did send it earlier to you, but if this works, we can just do it this way too.
I got an extra one here. I
Except
did.
the entire.
I did print them both out. So,
Talking with my mouth full.
yeah, just to start with,
I'll show you that one then.
in the land information office, we do archive in our land information plan all of the data that we house in our geospatial library. So if anybody's ever curious what data we actually have, it's available in our 3-year plan. And in that, we have a land use layer, and that current land use layer was completed for the county. It's a county-wide existing land use layer that was ultimately created in 2009 and 2010. This is actually what it looks like. It was developed using the 2005 aerial imagery that we had and 2008 NAPE color orthophotography.
This one is.
Thank you.
There.
And you can see the categories.
You full screen that?
I am on full screen.
Oh, okay. Does it? Okay, thank you.
Let's see. I'm not sure how to,
Have to go.
Can you just tell us what those,
View.
the
You.
uses are?
on my screen that I'm
Agricultural.
looking at, it's,
Mhm.
yeah, let's do speaker mode. Try speaker.
Agricultural, barren, developed forest, grassland, open
There's
water,
too
wetland.
much stuff going on.
There you go.
Sorry, go
There
to,
you go.
do you see where it says speaker? Yeah, try that one and see if that gives us an enlargement.
No,
Nope, didn't do it.
we're okay, I guess. I can read
Okay.
it. So barren, developed forest, grassland, open
Move it
water.
a little with your
wetland.
mouse maybe and it'll get it lower.
And wetlands are
There you are.
square. How come wetlands are
So
square?
these are polygons. So that's just a legend. That's just showing the categories. I have to admit that I was the one that did this for a year back when I was a GIS technician in the land information office for Doug Avalos. And so in essence, you're outlining the different land uses and then giving it one of these categories. These categories then actually have a breakdown into a secondary description, and those are very finite defined here. You can see kind of the listings that they have there, and there's a whole bunch of them. So this was quite an undertaking. Unfortunately, at this time, the completion of this data set, we do not have an updated land use description at this time. This is what we're working with. However, this is considered more accurate at times than what we're getting from like satellite imagery and guessing what the land use is because it was done by hand. So it was like customized, even though it's outdated, it is a solid foundation to work from. And
2009.
this is from 2009. It was completed in 2010. Yeah. So the future land use, the notes on future land use from our plan states, Vernon County has not passed a comprehensive plan, and therefore there is no reason to develop a meaningful future land use data layer. Also, the minimal amount of comprehensive planning that has been undertaken by local units of government within Vernon County does not warrant the county spend any time or resources compiling or maintaining a data layer from a patchwork of local government future land use maps at this time. The need for this data layer will be periodically reassessed. Obviously, this is up for discussion. You know, we'll have to revisit that now.
Who wrote?
Doug Avalos, and this is for the latest plan
All right.
that is at the end of this year, a 3-year plan. All right, so that's where that language came from. There was also then, I thought, well, it'd be helpful if we had maps of the farmland preservation. So when I started, this was in 2019, what Doug had created. But since then, we had the addition of Harmony. So the maps look a little bit different these days. Hamburg. And Franklin was attempting to pass farmland preservation, but it did not go through. So if anybody's wondering where this data comes from for these maps, there's special DAT cap. When you talk about Tim Jackson, there's specs that we have to meet in order to submit these farmland preservation maps. This is an example of one for the town of Hamburg, what that looks like. And if we want to zoom in, let's see, I should have brought a mouse, but this is, in essence, eligible or ineligible farmland preservation areas. And then an example of detailed of the farmland preservation zoning district. This is
the categories then that were given in our office by the township in here: agriculture, industrial, residential, rural, commercial, rural, residential. And then we have to parcel by parcel code that based off of the information that the township gives us. So this can be a bit of a time consuming process, but one that has to go through in order for the townships to receive farmland preservation. So this is the mapping side of it. I can't speak beyond that. This is, we're given information by the townships and then code it as they need. So that's in essence the farmland preservation. We also house in our geospatial library zoning it for villages. We don't have it at the county level, but we do maintain it to help out our townships. So this is an example of a recently zoning district map that Lawrence worked closely with the town of Viroqua. I'm going to try to bring up, and Tim Dolan in our office mapped. So you can see here are the different categories being used, and then the parcels being coded as such in the map. So we maintain that for the different townships as requested. This is.
What special purpose there? What is that?
We'd have to ask the town of Viroqua. Special purposes, Lawrence, do you know offhand?
It's anything, like,
Would it be TIF
other stuff.
We don't map TIF.
It's things that don't fall in any other categories.
Okay.
Basically. Can't give you an example off the top of my head, but I know they do have a couple.
And then these are just other examples of other villages that we map for folks and what we have on hand. So again, we're not defining this for them. They're defining this for us, the categories they want us to use. We're just doing the mapping end for them. But when folks call our office on a almost daily basis asking, hey, I'm interested in building a house, I need to know what regulations there are. We have to ask, is it in a village? Is it in a city? Because we have to defer them to then contact that individual municipality, since we don't have it at this level. There's a level of expectation there seems to be for Lawrence to have to know what these regulations are in the different villages and cities. It can get kind of overwhelming, but that's what we are working with here at Vernon County. And that's all that I put together in terms of the different land use data that we have. Any questions?
How does one access those, for example, farmland preservation maps? Is that something we can go through the website and find?
Well, I believe Land and Water has it on their website. I'd have to check for you to confirm that, but.
DATCAP has them on their website.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about some of the entries into farmland preservation maps that we don't have to get into discussion now, but it'd be worth looking at and studying to just understand better. Just what I'm trying to do here is understand this whole.
Well, can you just,
Our website does show the townships that are.
Farmland
It
preservation.
doesn't show their farmland preservation map that you were referring
No,
to?
we do not have that.
Okay.
can you just send us what you have here to the group?
Which part of it?
Your presentation?
Oh, sure.
That would suffice, wouldn't it?
Is that what you'd like?
Sure. if we
Oh,
click on
sure.
those maps.
Well, that would,
Sure. I sent it over to you. You'll let me know if you have any problems forwarding that on to anyone else. But unless there was like a map or something that people wanted, do you want a farmland preservation map? Like tangible map, or this digital presentation is sufficient?
That's
Would
sufficient
be
at this
fine to
point.
start,
Okay.
for me anyway.
Yeah, me too.
I don't mean to keep going, Jack, but since you gave me the microphone,
I want to finish answering George's question. The official map has to be kept in the township. Sometimes they update that, gives us a copy of that map,
Sometimes they don't.
and sometimes they do not. But the official location of the map is always in the township, and that's in the ordinance.
Right. I just want to understand the whole situation better.
okay, so let me do it.
in which ordinance? The township ordinance?
Like I believe here I have on the screen, like Town of Hamburg, when we did theirs, they have their zoning ordinance available online. And then I believe they put up their zoning map that we had made for them. Yeah, so this is, they used it just to post it on their website then.
So Town of Hamburg online.
Yeah, so I just Googled Town of Hamburg and it comes up on the top under zoning ordinance and zoning map.
Okay.
And that's the most recent one that we did. So that's why it's in my memory to visit this. But so in this discussion of land use data, I thought, I was asked by Matt and Jack to put together a map. So we printed off this map that's over here on the side. However, when we're talking about land use and development, Matt, do you mind passing one around? And I'm gonna share this on the screen since we have a dark screen, right? Or dark room right now. What I put together here is just a little bit. Promoting promoting data to help us inform the work that you guys do. What this is we work with dispatch daily. Whenever there's a new address that gets added to the county, Sergeant Olson lets us know where that GPS location is, and we put it into our GIS map so that if they get a call to 911, they're able to have an officer go there. So what I thought would be useful in this land use discussion, future land use, is just having an understanding of perhaps where in the last few years we've had new development of houses or addresses, businesses. It's wherever we have a new address put on the GIS map. I thought it would be helpful for you to understand spatially where these points are being added, but then code it by color so you have a temporal understanding as well. And that way we could see if there's clustering over areas. And so I wasn't asked to do this, but I just thought it might be helpful for us to have to see in amongst this discussion, since this is data that we have. And then there is on that map a count in the bottom that lets us know how many addresses per year have been added. And the caveat of 2024, we have 131 addresses we've added to our map to date. 2024 is obviously not over yet, so just know that that number will be increasing. It's just a static image right now, but that will be changing going forward.
So these
How many
are
total?
not necessarily residences, they're addresses.
These are
So somebody
exactly.
wanted one because they were putting a shed on this.
Fire number,
And I
correct.
just wanted a number.
Yes, that is correct.
But some of the clusters you can see, like this one, I know that's a development down there. It's off American Heritage. That's Elk Run.
Owls are all new homes on the left.
One on the south side of the town of Webster, that's actually all along North Elk Run Road.
Right.
Kind of did that this morning.
Yeah, that was,
And the one that's the north side of the town of Webster is along County S.
That cluster in Webster is North Elk Run Road.
The top one.
yeah, I'll try to point to it. This one right here is Elk Run,
Yeah. So
and
that's
then this is
North
along
Elk Run
County
Road.
D.
all along that.
And this is the American
When I
Heritage.
lived in that was.
Oh,
Over by DeSoto. It's a
But she
lot.
just now started building.
Oh,
Okay.
you know what, Matt, we should mention that so everybody else can hear that, because I did not know that. So I'm just
I
gonna,
just know because we issued it.
I'm gonna scroll over here. Matt was saying that this cluster here, go ahead, Matt.
It's American Heritage Drive. It's off of, it's like a subdivision overlooking the Mississippi. A lot of vacation properties in there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
592 in, what was that, 5 years?
Four, yeah.
And this one isn't even done yet.
No, this year is not even done yet. And so I just was trying to give you data to help understand. We're talking about, are people coming to Vernon County? You know, what does development look like? Where is it happening? You have something to work with.
It also includes cemeteries
Say that.
or sometimes
They're
they identify.
Airbnbs.
A lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them.
Yes, right.
Right. Airbnb.
I know they are, yeah.
No, they don't, but they have a fire
River
number.
They do have a fire number, and if they needed it, yeah.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
We actually had one happen recently.
So that's why I want you to remember that even though it says another address, it's not, it could be a cabin, a phone booth.
Yeah, it's a fire number.
Is there any way to break that down? Like you're talking, this development is a lot of vacation home. Like how many of these actually have somebody living?
The data that we're given by the sheriff's office is if it is a site that is maybe, there's only a certain number of categories that it could be: cemetery, school, phone booth, other business.
And we had
And we
broken them
can break that
down, we had
down.
broken them down to like LLCs and in the past and like out of area landowners, and we had like, 40% of the parcels, it was 47% of the parcels were owned by out of area entities
Oh,
or
we
out
did
of
that for-
area.
Yes, yeah, I recently did that for the Coon Creek watershed, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it was.
Not that you guys
yeah.
need any more work to do.
Right.
No, we had done that already. And like I said, I brought that to the infrastructure committee.
Oh, yeah, we did do that for you.
Yeah.
We did that in the last year for you. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it was
Oh,
a
yeah.
few months back.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So, and it was broken down, like I said, it was 40-some% of all the parcels in Vernon County were owned by out of area entities. Whether it be people or
What?
LLCs or whatever, it was like 40 some odd percent. Yeah.
But it was interesting that the Coon Creek Community Watershed Council had us do that for their watershed. And they found overwhelmingly that people who own land in that watershed live in that watershed.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wanted to know if they weren't living within that watershed, how close in vicinity were they? And then were they out of state? And it was surprisingly local.
Yeah, certain watersheds, yeah.
Data.
So, yeah,
About
it's,
Coon Creek keeps it local.
I guess, I'm
Yeah,
not sure, something into water maybe.
What I find surprising about this map is that Bergen, which is south of La Crosse, a very populous area, seems to have,
There's,
other than the village, almost no
Mhm.
in that one area right there, that's,
village.
what is that, run again court? That's that subdivision right there, all those clusters.
But it's pretty full. I mean, a lot of the virgin area is pretty full right now.
Yeah, that one's like run again court. Yeah.
That is.
So
Of
that,
course, these are new addresses, so there may already be such development.
Yeah.
correct.
mhm.
This is just a snapshot,
Yeah.
just to give you an idea.
Interesting. It is interesting. Yeah.
You bet.
Okay, so how this ties into the bigger picture.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. I'll look to you for guidance on this too. I think if we want to move forward the future land use map, this will sort of be the broad vision of what you want to see in the county. I think probably want to just sketch out the categories we want. And then from there, what some criteria for where we want to show development. And you can work through those. I have some ideas. You probably have some ideas, but I'm thinking about sketching out a GIS project, right? So you want your categories and then your criteria
Right.
for where we would like to see planned development. So I have this example for you from Greenfield. They have ag, commercial, mobile home community or manufactured home community, and then residential. And they also broke out prime ag lands with an overlay and woodlands. So those are the categories, and every one of those that you had little bit different categories, but those are some examples. And I don't want to bring up La Crosse County, but they also have another pretty complex future land use map, but it's got nice broad categories again. Environmental, non-residential, public institutions, residential, planned growth, which I think is something might be very pertinent to this map. Water, exclusive ag. So the environmental category, and these can all be defined, but environmental is roughly areas that are greater than 30% slope. So in other words, you can't build there. Not going to happen. Not a good idea. Planned growth, obviously planned growth. And I think that's where we should develop some criteria for the planned growth. Sewers, electrical, roads, and then we can start to develop our staff, and maybe your staff can develop a future land use map based on those criteria that this committee lays out. How does that sound for a working plan?
When would your land use map need to be completed by for the comprehensive plan?
Before the end.
And that is,
In roughly December. I mean,
yeah,
drop deadline of March, but we want to have.
This year? This year?
Yeah, this year.
I don't think our office would have capacity to complete that.
I mean, our staff could help with it. If we had, what do you think that? You think it's just a bridge too far?
Is the land use plan part of a comprehensive plan?
It could be, should be, doesn't have to be, but
Because you're asking us to take the entire Vernon County and determine what we think the land use should be for everywhere in the whole county by December?
and you can start with existing land use.
Yeah, if can we use that 2009, 2010 map and,
You
you know, I mean, as our
Recognizing it's
base.
outdated.
But for our purpose, the bigger thing is proposed growth, I would think, would be
Right.
what we're looking
Right.
for
Yeah.
more so than,
Yeah.
because if we already kind of have, this is farmland, this is whatever.
Mhm.
Well, if you look at the Greenfield map, one thing that strikes me is that it appears, though, because one's an overlay and the other is that residences are not allowed in woodland areas. Is that what this says?
Well, La Crosse County has an ordinance that you can't build within 100 feet of 30% slope. So that sort of precludes those. And you can't build you can't disturb within 100 feet of a 30% slope.
Why?
Why? Because your house slides down off the hill and
Build with piers, and you come off the top and build a house on the edge and have a great view.
Up here on our side of the county.
And some of it's probably runoff and sedimentation and that type of stuff. So I'm sure that
Check for that.
plays into it, trying to protect those areas.
Well, yeah, the ag use alone creates a hell of a lot more runoff than residences.
But eggs not impervious. You put a roof on something, all that water runs off unless you're taking mitigation, you're collecting it.
You plant corn, you're gonna see a lot of runoff. The most good part of this county is planted in corn, and most corn, talk to any of our ag people, that's significant, that's a lot of soil loss for all that.
For sure, but we're getting into the weeds.
yeah, so I'd like to just go back to Monique and hear what
Yeah,
thoughts are, and then the committee can hear that.
Yeah, it would be great to have help. We have other deadlines that we're working on.
Yeah,
Next Generation 911, we've got our plan. We've got brick grant. So we take capacity. So to put on a project like this on us right now before the end of the year,
Yeah,
we're trying to get done with our grant deliverables is a little, it makes me a little nervous. I don't think we'd be able to complete that in time for you. And I wouldn't want to be a holdup.
and our staff would,
assist with that.
yes,
Yeah,
but
well, that
I
would
think
be
what we
great.
need is, is it possible, is the data there? Is
We're
this
happy to
committee
share
able
our
to
data.
do it? And do we want to do that?
I think it's worth it. If we're not
Yeah.
the last map straw on a camel's back.
Well, and like I said, common land use layer right now has attributes
Yes.
to it that they can parse out those attributes. And just generically say, well, anything that's forestry or, any of that stuff, we just lump into an ag forestry and you make a generic one, incorporate all those in, so I mean, you're not, I think it's doable, with their help. I'm not saying
Right,
you're
right,
doing
right,
it,
right.
and don't be mistaken by me saying,
Mhm.
thinking that I'm putting that on you.
So we have GIS staff that could put hours into this. Do we have, are we ready to go with the categories here? And do we have the criteria for development? I think we're close to those. I think we have the categories. We can scratch these out. I can bring back a draft of categories definitions next time, and then the criteria for areas of development.
Did I understand that the ag, commercial, MHC, residential would be the categories?
It's up to you what the categories are.
Yeah, having no experience with maps, that was
Right.
limiting.
Right.
So
Yep.
I would rather
And
break
then-
out woodlands.
So yes, this one
Yeah.
from La Crosse is a little bit different.
So you want an ag and a forestry?
I think
And
those
you have,
Okay.
I just
should be
I
separate.
just wanted to suggest something that since
Sure, yeah.
Rebecca's going to be doing that education on October 2nd, that
I know.
even if you
I know,
don't put
right.
forth draft ones, that you would have, she'll bring more examples of what rural communities typically do in counties across the state. So that might be something that when you can glean more information from what she's saying there, that may change what your draft is here. So just not feel like you're sticking to these on that, but to know that there'll be other options that are addressed through it. And if you have questions based off of what the current proposal was, or what through the end of this year, I think is what it is, correct? For that future, that name is map.
Yeah, For inclusion in the plan before the end of the year.
Yes, yeah. So, that would give you guys good more time to talk at the next one and really hash out what that looks like and feel better informed. If you guys wanted to do that, that's just my suggestion with it.
I think if we've got an expert coming to talk, we should take advantage of that. So what do we need, like, yes, we'd like a motion to go forward with the land use map? Okay.
Sure.
I
Future land use map,
a motion for the development of a future land use map.
Okay, so first, second
I'll second.
by Sandy, roll call.
You get a roll call on it for the notes, just to say.
Sure, let's have a, only one demand for a roll call or request is by one person is binding on the group. So if he's asked for a roll call, we got to do a roll call.
Okay, Andy?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I guess.
Jordan?
I'm not convinced, I'm sorry.
Then vote no.
We have a yes, I guess category.
You can,
Yeah.
it's open
No,
for
it's-
discussion, right? Do
Right.
He said yes.
you want to?
Yeah, I don't want it, but I'll say yes, so we see what we have. I don't want to take the hassle at the county, let me tell you. Less is better, in my opinion. That's just me, Jack.
Yeah, and I'm,
I
don't
think we're
know.
still voting. He said
But I think
Cindy voted.
We already got-
Sandy was
Yeah,
first.
this sets the stage for future zoning. It sort of gives you broad chunks of categories of what you want to see now.
But you're
What
already
you want to see
doing it, but you're already doing it.
We're already creating the future land use map.
Yeah. I mean, you already have essentially zoned and you have 5 townships or whatever that have.
Farmland preservation.
Yeah, so I mean, it's,
This won't be binding though. The future land use map won't be binding in any way. However, when
Well-
you as the plan commission have proposals come to you, and once you have zoning set up, and someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to rezone this. This is the map you would reference and say, okay, this is what the future land use map says. It would just be another thing that you would
so
take
we
into
are
consideration.
adopting it then.
Well, the motion was to develop it.
Yeah, right. So then we need to see what it is.
We don't want to develop it if it's not going to be adopted as part of the plan.
I mean, it makes sense to go with it. We're writing all of this stuff up as like, this is what we want our 20-year plan to be. It
Right.
makes perfect sense to have a visual key to go with it.
I don't disagree with that, but to do that in 2 or 3 months to determine the future land use of Vernon County for the entire county as a goal, I think that's a tremendously rushed schedule to very important questions. Somebody wants to quote rezone. Well, have we already defined it? I mean, actually, have we, or has some staff up in La Crosse defined what our county is going to look like 20, 30 years from now? These are momentous questions, and I don't think we've got the time, if we're looking at a December deadline, to present a comprehensive plan to have a good map. We have maps, or we can have a map. They can print up anything they want, but
And that's
really
map's fluid. It can
fluid.
change,
For sure,
right?
we would have the ability to review it
Update.
and get our.
That would be my
Collective eye.
concern, is we need to review it. This will be a hot topic. And if you put that for public hearing of some sort.
And that's why we've stated that this document's a fluid document, that it
Well, it's-
can and should be updated, right?
but it's not fluid in the sense that that's easy.
Well,
Once
So not much is easy in life.
no,
No, but once you, yes, exactly. Except not having a plan is easier and sometimes than having a plan that you have to go through a lot of processes and change.
I think you may have, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
You may have in place a lot of this already.
Yes.
Mhm.
The parts that will be new
Yep.
would be the categories, criteria for development, and that would be the
Yeah.
additional.
Well, and I guess I would agree with
And that would
George
be
on
where
that,
the
because
discussion comes in.
under the intergovernmental, if we're going to include all these groups, so what our opinion and their opinion match, we're not going to get that done by December.
I think we just have to get like Harmony's, Hamburg's. We just
Right.
got to get their
No,
maps.
but as far as the intergovernmental thing, where we're saying, like DeSoto, when they were talking in Wheatland, it was, because the town of, or the
Yes, the village.
Crawford County has one idea, the village of DeSoto, which is split, has a
Yeah,
different
they're
opinion,
happy.
then Town of Wheatland has a different opinion. I mean, if you're gonna decide to define growth, you need to include those discussions.
Iowa is it?
So I mean, it's gonna take longer than.
Yep.
And I guess my thought is, I like the idea of doing the map. I just don't like saying we're gonna have it done by the end of this, because to do it right, it'll take longer if we're gonna incorporate some of this intergovernmental stuff, which we can still work toward it. We can still do what we're doing. We won't have the map.
So we could do a version of this that is simplified, that just shows areas for planned growth.
Yeah, right.
That's,
And that's essentially what you're depicting here without everything else.
that's not only
Right.
areas for planned growth, it's areas for particular types of growth. I mean, are you suggesting some areas aren't going to be allowed to grow and others will? No, we were trying to decide this type of growth will happen here and this type of growth will happen there, but you're still trying to dictate to the entire.
Yeah, so the goal in the plan says that we want to develop around existing infrastructure. So we have the existing infrastructure. We have 4 categories of that: sewer, water, electricity, etc. Then you put a buffer that's
Which is a spatial
Mile.
dimension. Yeah, you can define it however far.
and you have a map.
Why do you want to restrict residences to specific?
You're not restricting it. You're just saying this is where this plan wants to see growth.
Well,
I'm not saying that it
once
can't
that
happen.
plan gets in the comprehensive plan, it becomes restricting. That's guides our future zoning or anything else.
Well, right now, what it looks like is this map here, that you have new addresses, because in that sense,
Scattershot.
that's what we're working with right now.
Sure.
Mhm.
What's wrong with that?
I understand.
And if you want to choose to stay that way, that is the choice of the commission. I think the alternative that's being presented is if you would want to influence where that's happening, then you choose the route of making a planned growth layer.
And then, theoretically, the county could facilitate development in those areas because it's financially advantageous to them to keep the development in those areas.
Right.
Fireland preservation backs that up. And zoning later
Right.
would facilitate.
And I agree with that, but I think the discussion would have to include the municipalities in every area. That's gonna take a while.
In that vein, say you guys weren't already heavily loaded.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
none of us make maps for a living. Is December a realistic timeline for this?
We'll do whatever we need to do for you guys to make this
I
happen.
mean, I'm not asking you guys to continue to work yourself.
It all
but,
depends on how you define what that planned growth would be.
The
Because
categories.
if you have more categories, then it's more tedious work to define that area. If that makes sense.
So it's complicated, you're saying.
Well, it's feasible. It's feasible. If this is what you need, then we will do what we need to do to get it to you guys. It's nice to know that we have our Mississippi River Regional Planning Commission folks that would be on board. I'm happy to do that. It's just,
If we have the data with our staff,
Right.
we could make that map tomorrow.
And
we have the-
you guys have the data.
we have the data. It's outdated,
We don't know if we have the
But we-
data yet,
but we'd happy to,
depending on what the
Right.
committee wants.
we'd be happy to share with the land use categories that we have already defined. That's a little bit outdated. We'd happy to share that with you.
You
So
can make a map of existing use, but how can you make a map of projected, of desired use? That's a value judgment. That's not a technical, give it to a map person and they'll spit it out. That requires value judgments. And that can only be done in a politically representative body. Either this commission is kind of is a stepping stone towards that, which of course is the county board. I don't think that your staff can tell us in Vernon County where certain developments should occur.
So I think you're not wrong, and it's twofold. We're concerned about the timeline, and it sounds like you
Right.
guys got to find the data, you can make the map, and then the discussion on those value interpretations happens after we've got a baseline established.
Now I remember.
We already have input though from listening sessions and surveys that are guiding the overall elements. And the future land use map is going to be guided based upon what those elements are already putting forth. So we're already strategically planning, and that's what a future land use map helps you do, is to strategically plan. We know that in the existing conditions report, it said that we need about 2,600 plus or minus acres of residential land. that alone may not be feasible, but can we designate some areas of proposed future growth based on current infrastructure? And the reason why you would want to do it based on current infrastructure is because then you're not spending a ton of money, or you're not fighting with developers to come in and build that out. WICA now has an infrastructure loan that does help municipalities come in and expand current areas of roadways and water lines, et cetera, sewer and stuff like that. But it would be an existing spots, because you also have to look at other markets and things like that that's going on, and look at current trends that are happening in economic development. If Vernon County, that already struggles in areas, to have a good budget that's not just relying on third-party additional support for grants and funding sources that way. We need to think strategically in how is the county going to grow in the future, and how are we going to retain people? Are we going to continue to see Airbnbs come in because people outside of the county have a whole bunch of money and can come in and buy our land, and we're not dictating what that looks like at this point in time? We're not helping residents that would like to have their own place to live. Are we, by not doing that, going to create and further have issues? Or can we put together a future land use map that would help to start in regulating how property is done that way? Because there's a lot of other communities around that are facing Airbnb crisis issues, and they're putting in ordinances. They're adopting general zoning and things like that because it's protecting their residents. It's keeping a retention value for them. So those are things that we need to think about too.
So just overall, the future land use map is one of the products of a comp plan. Like that's what all the goals, all the things, all the feed into that. So I think what we could do is we could take criteria from another future land use map. Our staff could just take the data we have
As a baseline.
and make a buffer and bring that in to show you. So what we would do is we would take sewer data. We haven't been able to find that. Doesn't exist.
Do you have it?
No, it
No,
doesn't.
we
No,
don't.
I just.
Okay.
It'd be great to have.
Up here, I know where.
We have a request. We have a request to the state, but it doesn't look like it's going to be successful.
We're working on.
So anyway, we could roughly draw that though, right? I mean, we could take a guess. What the lines are. Anyway,
Yes, yeah.
I think, like, we voted to make the land use map, get as many data points into it
Okay.
as is reasonable.
Sure.
And
Right,
look at it next
I'm not
month.
bringing it. Does that sound okay to everybody? We won't spend a ton of time on it. We'll draft it. We'll have our GS person come next time. And
One thing I don't quite understand though is this whole drive to force residences to be in already occupied areas. We keep talking about infrastructure. Right now, the water sewer bill in the village of Lafarge, it's a very small village, is, well, a non-occupied house, which I'm working on one right now. So there's very little water usage. It's $100 a month for the water and sewer.
I can tell you what,
And yet,
I want you to
in
finish,
my
but I
own
can tell
home,
you what you're,
I had a higher upfront cost because I had to put a septic in and I had to put a well in.
Yeah.
But now my usage is determined basically a small amount of electricity, which is covered by my solar panels and battery. So I don't, and of course, so I don't understand the urgency to keep forcing housing into already occupied areas.
yeah. So we don't have enough housing right now.
Right, exactly. And so
And
keep
it's-
discouraging it with
Let me just
bypassing
finish.
farmland
Let me just
preservation and all that.
finish.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So we don't have enough housing right now. How do we get more housing?
Right.
We need more supply. Well, if you have a development pattern that looks like this, that is not advantageous for the county to pay to deliver services to all these disparate locations.
They don't deliver
So
any
it
service.
essentially, single-family residents don't pay their own
They need
way
maintenance.
anymore.
City builds them.
They need maintenance.
And we need higher density housing everywhere.
Right.
So what that looks like is development contiguous to other development. That's where developers can actually afford to build housing and make money from it and bring in more units so people can live.
Cheaper cost.
Right, but that's nothing stops them from, nothing stops them from doing that now. In fact, we see on that map, there are some developments already occurring. But what you're doing is, by doing this, is sure that we're not doing anything new except restricting the housing elsewhere. So the person that's not a developer wants to build their own house. Now you're going to add more steps, more costs to do it than if you, and maybe you're not, we're not developing housing. That's not a residential district. So now you either got to get somebody to change the district or get a variance or something like that. It's discouraging housing. It's nothing by that encourages more developers they can do that now. They understand that it'd be easier to build a development on the edge of a village or where there's water and sewer because they don't have to have those costs to their home. But for the individual building a house, why are we making it more difficult to add housing to the housing stock in Vernon County? That's my whole point. I understand. That's where I think it's a crux of the issue.
I just wanted to raise with that, the environmental concerns with, having, these clusters of, wells, private wells. Specifically, you'll see like these, neighborhoods that were developed all on private wells. Well, all of a sudden you have a nitrate problem, and you have, at least that's a treatable issue. In town of Campbell, all of our private wells contaminated with PFAS. Had that development been done properly, where they were hooked up to municipal utilities, it's a much easier solvable problem than now they're looking at an $80 million water system, where had that been developed and done properly years ago, the cost would have been a lot less, and this solution for their water issue would have been a lot easier than what they're looking at right now. So I just wanted to bring up that environmental standpoint.
So I think you just wanted to think about planning in general is just making it easy to do the thing that's advantageous for the county government or the people that live there.
Well, this
isn't
more cost.
This doesn't prohibit.
It's more cost effective up front. I know for a fact. I talk to people building houses all the time. The price of drilling a well is outrageous right now. There's a guy up in that Run Again Court one that was drilling a well he had quotes ranging from $70,000 to $50,000 just to drill it.
Are you kidding?
Generally, it's about 20 to 25,000 for a well in Vernon.
We drilled 3 years ago, it was 14.
Yeah.
It depends
Right.
on how deep it is.
I drilled 3 years ago, and I had right around there now. I just had to replace a well. I just had to replace a well. It was 22 up front for the well.
Sure.
And that's the same distance that I drilled 5 years ago. So, and the pump has gone up quite a bit too. That's an extra $2,000 from what I paid 5 years ago. So just those costs have gone up exponentially. Septic systems have gone up exponentially also because the concrete and the tanks. So the tanks are $1,500 more for a small tank than they were 5 years ago.
Absolutely. The costs have gone up, but also have the cost of cities and water treatment and the requirements that they're meeting are going, their rates are going up faster, I think, than the cost of a well. And once you put the well in, you've got it. And well, yes, there are problems that could occur, but you've paid for it. Now you get to use it on your own. I'm not saying, why not let people make the choice? We're saying, oh, it's going to be too expensive. We're not going to let you do that.
No, that's not what I was trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's more cost effective for your average landowner, homeowner to build next to where there's existing utilities.
Because they don't have the privacy.
George, can so I don't know you outside of this committee. Did you grow up in the Midwest? You did? You spent much time on the coasts?
No. Washington, D.C. for a while.
You get out to like 2 years ago, we visited a friend that's just north of Seattle, and it's awful. The development exploded. There are houses everywhere. Every pretty bluff or beautiful lake has been fully developed. No restrictions everywhere. I don't want to see that in Vernon County, where it's like, yep, we need houses, but we also have to be smart and have a plan for this, or it's just going to be everywhere exploding growth. Like, we have to put some effort into what things are going to look like in 20 years when my kids may want to live here. We might not be able to if we didn't actually have a plan of development going forward. Like, I understand wanting to have like the freedom to do what you want. I get it, but like, we live in a greater society. We have a finite amount of space in the county, and we have to use our space smart.
Well, I don't disagree with that, of course, but I don't think we're at that stage yet where we have to protect our property from that type of coastal. I certainly have been on the coast. I've lived in New York State, I've lived in Washington, D.C., I've lived in cities, I understand. But the control, if we want more housing, I'm just keep saying, if you discourage it, you're going to get less housing. We're going to have less people move into Vernon County. We're going to have less people having jobs here because we're just making it harder to build houses and forcing people to build them.
How are we discouraging?
Because by making rules and regulations that force you to build in urban areas or next to services or cluster, which is what the farmland preservation wants. Yes, what do you say? Keep saying, but that's what the farmland preservation says.
It's encouraging it
people to
in
cluster.
regions. It's not discouraging it overall. We are encouraging certain areas to be developed.
Certain areas, but if somebody wants to build in another area, then that's discouraged.
Well, but they may not be able to build in an area, especially if you're looking at something that has a sinkhole in it. That would be a viable option for somebody too. So if you are looking at that, it's a combination of things. So by proposing it and looking at it, it's helping people so that they're not spending out money.
Right.
And then they're going to be at a total loss because they can't actually build on it. And we have people that buy property already here thinking they can build on it. Well, then they find out, okay, well, there's some shoreline protection or there's some other things on it. And by the time that they find a place on the property that they can build, it's not really a viable area within that even is suitable for them to build because they'll have to do a bunch of grading and other things. So then people are reselling the land because they spent money out and now the cost of land is being driven up because they have to obviously sell high enough to pay off the loan they got to buy the land.
I apologize. I had to step out and make a phone call, but I understand. So the land use map that we have right now would be just if somebody comes and says, I'd like to build a house, what would be the easiest place to do it at? That would be a suggestion. It doesn't limit what George is saying, if I want to build, I have this land I want to build on. It doesn't limit that in any way, right?
No.
I mean, it's just this, well, we're not into zoning. We're just at a land use. So if it's there's no teeth to this. They can build whatever they want.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes in and asks, I'd like to find a place that has the infrastructure, that has everything fine. Or if I want to build in the middle of whatever township, you got to buy the land, but then it's still up to the township's rules.
And there's things you can do to facilitate that development before it happens. Plat it, you do things that someone can step in and say, oh, I can develop right here tomorrow. Great, let's do this. Instead of saying, yeah, what are the restrictions? What are the things I don't know about? What is the shoreline? You've done that for them already by saying, here's where the sewer is. Here's where the zoning works out. Here's where, other things like that. There is no shoreline here. We'd avoid the shoreline.
So yeah, again, I think the map, we've approved developing the map.
Yeah.
Get as many data points as within reason, and we'll keep talking about this next month.
So conceptually, we'll take the data we can find and we'll create a small buffer around those areas. And I'll tell you how we made it, and you can alter it as you see fit.
It's just a question that might relate to what you're doing. This Greenland map, which says yellow residences, they're all squares. Is that the parcel that has a house on it, or what is that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of dark areas, so that means there's no houses in those areas, or does it take someone else to show up as yellow on this?
The residential properties?
Residential area. I think that's probably
Your tax parcels?
private tax parcels, yeah. So within that, there's, small parcels in there. And that's probably the odd shape. They probably conform to the geography of the area.
To the actual legal description of the property, you're saying.
Right. Which would be conforming to the geography.
So, yeah. So
Just to mostly anecdotal points just to raise is that it's not uncommon for folks to call our office about zoning regulations for building and be totally surprised that we don't have any. I mean, that's, and I say that anecdotally because a lot of other places do have, requirements, recommendations, permits, yada, yada. There are, sometimes we have to restate it 2-3 times to let them know, no, it's good to go, and
And they tend to run a lot of scenarios by you, and so I can do this.
and I can,
Yeah,
and
go for it.
they don't get, they can barely process that we don't have it.
Exactly. I get that too.
And so that's what we're working with. And if that's what folks are great with, then great. I just wanted to let you know what we receive or what the communication looks like on the ground. And
Do
then
a lot of cautioning, like, think of emergency services getting to you, and they're like, oh, that's a thing?
yeah,
If
right.
you have a heart attack, that's definitely a thing.
And then the other piece, again, somewhat anecdotally, but we have some data points for it, is in the survey and now in this engagement summary, we're seeing the request to preserve agricultural land. And on a weekly basis, I'm putting a dot on the map. I have an aerial image in the background, and I would be remiss to not share that they're going on ag fields. It's flat. It's got a beautiful view. It's happening. If folks in the commission are good with that, great. I just would rather give you the information that you're working with, that it's not uncommon that we're seeing new addresses come up in ag fields. And there is repeated comments just in the agriculture section here alone, 4 points raised about wanting to preserve agricultural land. So I don't want to put in my personal opinion about it, but what the sense is that there is an interest, that there's a preference for it to be planned or encouraged in certain areas. At least that's the vibe I'm picking up on from the community engagement that we've had thus far.
And in that scenario, the farmers are selling a lot off.
Right. To try to survive.
Can I just add one comment? When the map is printed, could we have more contrast between egg and woodlands? So that
Sure. Yep.
Stands out a little better.
Yeah. Looks like more like green and green.
Yeah.
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 That's usually what they look like, but
Yeah.
they did a little different.
This one is like you really have to kind of.
One other thing, this is a little bit related, but one thing you want to think about too is preserving your bluff land, because as soon as you preserve your farmland, then the bluff lands become. So think about that.
You're already.
You don't have to think about it right now,
But
but
that's where you're talking
They're
100
already
feet
there.
within 30, yeah.
Yeah, that's why that one cluster down by DeSoto, that's all bluffland. That all was farmland. And now it's all cabins.
Yeah.
because that's maybe even a little bit more desirable than once the farmland's gone.
Right. But again, this is just a suggestion of what we'd like to see
Right.
until we get into something that is zoned or whatever.
Yep.
It's going to be a great resource.
Right.
Appreciate you guys putting that together.
Sure. We'll see what it looks like. Be interesting.
Great.
Sounds good.
We'll all work together on this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let me know.
Okay, so agenda items for the next meeting. We've got bring back. So we're gonna do this all over again.
Yeah.
Right, so 6, 7, 8. If everybody does their homework, we should be able to push through fairly quick. I would say from the October 2nd meeting,
So I can print it off.
can that just be incorporated into the farmland preservation discussion, or?
Oh,
I just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
can talk about what we learned at that meeting. And then-
It just reworded differently.
It'd be worth just having a separate point before that.
Yeah.
Just
Or maybe just, yeah. Lessons learned from the information from.
And Hannah, you're going to send something out?
Yeah.
in more details?
I can't take it.
You were working.
I will. Not worried about how long the bike is.
Because that's, I just said I don't think I'll work it because,
By 5.
we usually post those as there may be one.
Perfect.
And that's what we got going on.
Will be virtual and it'll be a hybrid.
Anybody else have anything to bring up next time? If you do, let one of us know. So agenda item.
Oh, were you going to provide folks with the entirety of the goals, like the revised?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we make that an agenda.
A clean one,
That's a good one.
a good clean one.
Wait, what's the name?
Right.
We'll call those the final goals.
Oh, boy.
Right. And I did final.
Okay, so next meeting, October 9th, same time, same place. Daniel, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. What's there?
Just colors.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody.